Alrighty, on to our next rigid body constraint, which is point. So we're going to need two objects, just like the last time. In this case, I think I'm going to use a cube. Now you can see I have my world origin kind of all over the place here. I'll explain why that is in just a moment. First of all, what we need is one cube. We're going to Shift D to duplicate. Now our top cube is going to be a rigid body. We're going to set that to passive, just like the last time. And our bottom cube, we're going to set that to active. So we have two rigid bodies. One is active, one is passive. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my random colors so we can see. All right, now what we need to do is we obviously need a way to add our constraint. Now, instead of adding our constraint to the object itself, I'm actually going to go ahead and add something called an empty. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add, Empty, and I'm going to click on Arrows or Plane Axis. Now, when you do this, you're going to notice that it's going to snap to our origin, which is right here because I moved it in our last scene. Now, right here, this point is actually going to be the point of our rigid body constraint, and that'll make sense in 1 second. Now, remember, you can't add a rigid body constraint until you have rigid bodies in your scene. So right now, you'll see rigid body constraint in our physics tab. Make sure you're clicked onto your empty. You'll see it says empty right here in the hierarchy. Add a rigid body constraint. Instead of fixed, we're going to choose point. Now for our first object, I'm going to go ahead and click on our passive object up here. And for our second object, I'm going to click on this object below. Now you'll notice we get that dotted line, just like last time, which is going to indicate that there's some kind of relationship here. Now I'm going to go ahead and move this around, and notice how those lines move. Now this is really important because this point right here is where we're going to get the rotation from. So watch what happens when I click play. Look at that. That is pretty cool. There's a lot you can do with this. I promise you that. So I'm going to go ahead and back this up. Now, what's really important to note is as this swings here on this point, think of it as almost a ball pivot point, okay? Because that's essentially what it is. Now, if I wanted to, I could move my cube over here. I can press play, and you'll notice that it maintains the same rotation. This is really important to know because if you want it to rotate about a certain area, you need to be able to change the origin of the object. Remember this little dot in the center of the object? That is the origin or the center of that object. So if I tab into edit mode here, and I just, let's for example say I select my corner here, all right, I have this corner vertex. If I go up here to mesh, snap, I'm going to go ahead and choose cursor to selected. Now you can see our origin, our world cursor goes to that vertex. I'm going to tab out of edit mode. I'm going to right click on my object, set origin to 3D cursor. And now you can see how that dotted line is now fixed to that corner. So no matter where I move, that dotted line is going to follow our corner. So that is now our pivot point. And this will make sense in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and move this. I'm going to move it all the way out here. I'm going to rotate it. Now I'm going to press play. Now notice how the corner is our fixed point for our physics simulation. Very cool. And this is really important because if you want your pivot to go along a certain area of your cube, you need to do that. Let's say that I only want our empty to control this side of the cube. So right now, again, our empty is the pivot point. If I want to, I can try to move it towards the corner of this object, and I'll just eyeball it here. Let's pretend that's the perfect corner right there. Now it's going to look like there's an invisible rope or some kind of string controlling these two. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Notice how we have this line moving? That is our pivot point. And that is how you add the point constraint to a rigid body. And there is a lot of fun, cool stuff that you can do with this. So definitely have fun with this one. This is a fun constraint right here. All right, next we're going to move to our hinge type.